You ever have one of those moments where you absolutely know that you just stepped in it? That split second where your gut drops and you realize the whole operation just went from smooth to shit in about 3 heartbeats? Lagos Airport, 1983. Early morning, maybe 6:15. I'm standing at the customs checkpoint with my bags, watching the Nigerian security officer flip through my passport with that look. You know the look. The one that says he's seen something he doesn't like. The one that means you're not walking out of this airport anytime soon. My cover was solid. Import, export dealer, specializing in mining equipment. Had all the paperwork, business cards, letters of introduction from fictional companies that would check out if anyone bothered to verify them. I'd run this exact cover in 3 other African countries without a hitch. Clean, professional, boring as hell. That was the point. But this customs officer, young guy, maybe 25, sharp eyes, crisply pressed uniform, he's not looking at my passport anymore. He's looking at me. And then he's looking past me at 2 other security personnel who've materialized out of nowhere. Airport security in West Africa doesn't just materialize unless someone's made a call. Mr. Wall, he says. His English is perfect. British educated, probably. Please to step this way. That please is the worst word you can hear. When they're polite, you're already compromised. I pick up my bags. My mind is racing through the possibilities. What did I miss? What did they catch? The cover was clean. The documentation was clean. I'd arrived on a legitimate commercial flight from Abidjan. Nothing about this should have triggered anything. But here we are. 3 security officers now surrounding me, polite smiles, firm hands guiding me away from the main customs area toward a side office. This is how careers end, not in firefights, not in some dramatic shootout in the jungle, in a damn airport office in Lagos with fluorescent lights and a metal desk and 3 guys who've got you cold on something you haven't figured out yet. The office is small. Concrete walls, painted institutional green. Single window with bars. 1 desk. 3 chairs. The officer who called me over, I'll call him Officer Sharp Eyes. He gestures for me to sit. The other 2 position themselves by the door. Not blocking it exactly, just making it clear that leaving isn't currently an option. Your passport, Officer Sharp Eyes says. Not a question. He's already got it. He opens it again, runs his finger down the visa stamps. You have traveled extensively in West Africa, yes? Business, I say. Keep it simple. Import, export, mining equipment. Companies need parts. I facilitate transactions. The story rolls off my tongue because I've told it 100 times. Mining equipment. He nods slowly, writes something in a notebook. And which companies do you represent? I give him 3 names. Companies that exist on paper, companies with phone numbers that ring to answering services that will confirm my employment if called. This is basic tradecraft. This should work. But his expression doesn't change. He writes down the names, closes the notebook, looks at me again with those sharp eyes. Mr. Wall, we have received information that you may not be who you claim to be. There it is. The sentence that tells you everything just got complicated. In the intelligence business, there's blown and then there's burned. Blown means your cover's compromised, but you might be able to explain your way out of it. Burn means they know exactly who you are and what you do, and you're about to have a very bad day. I'm sitting in this office trying to figure out which category I'm in, and Officer Sharp Eyes is watching me like a hawk watches a field mouse, waiting for me to make a mistake, waiting for me to say the wrong thing. I don't understand, I say, which is true. I genuinely don't understand what triggered this. I'm here on legitimate business. If there's an issue with my documentation, I'm happy to provide additional information. He opens a drawer, pulls out a folder, places it on the desk between us, doesn't open it, just lets it sit there like a threat. We will need to verify some things, he says. This may take some time. I must ask you to remain here while we make inquiries. And that's when I know for certain I'm not leaving this airport today. maybe not tomorrow either. This isn't a routine customs check. This is Nigerian intelligence, and someone's told them something about me that's made them very interested in exactly who Billy is and what the hell he's doing in their country. The smart play now is to stay calm, answer questions, stick to the cover story. Wait it out. Let the embassy sort it out if it comes to that. The dumb play is to panic, to try to talk your way out, to volunteer information they haven't asked for yet. I've been in tight spots before. I've been held by hostile forces. I've been interrogated by people a lot scarier than airport security officers. But this has that particular flavor of complication that can end your operational career. Not because you did something wrong, but because someone somewhere decided to burn you for reasons you haven't figured out yet. Officer Sharp Eyes leaves the office. The two guards stay by the door. One of them offers me water. I take it. Drink slowly. Start running through everything that's happened in the last 72 hours trying to figure out where the leak is. Outside the window, I can hear Lagos waking up. Horns honking, voices shouting in Yoruba and Igbo, and pidgin English, the city moving forward while I'm stuck in this green office, waiting to find out if my career just ended at a customs checkpoint. This is going to be a long day. Let me back up. Explain how I ended up in Lagos in the first place. Because understanding that helps you understand why this whole thing went so sideways. 3 months earlier, I'm at Langley, retired from Army Special Forces, working contract jobs for the agency. The Cold War is still running hot in the early 80s, and West Africa is one of those theaters where the Soviets are making moves. Nigeria is important. Big oil reserves, strategic position, lots of political instability that the Russians are happy to exploit. I get called into a meeting, small room, 3 agency officers, map of West Africa on the wall. They've got a problem. We need eyes on the ground in Lagos, the senior officer says. Nigerian intelligence is compromised. We think the Soviets have penetrated at multiple levels. We need someone who can assess the situation without setting off alarms. This is the kind of assignment I love. Not direct action, not training guerrillas, just good old-fashioned intelligence work. Get in, observe, report back. Simple. Cover? I ask. We're thinking import, export, mining equipment. Gives you a reason to travel, meet with government officials, move around the country without raising suspicion. I nod. Makes sense? Nigeria's got mining operations. Tin, coal, some diamond activity in the north. A foreign businessman facilitating equipment sales would be unremarkable. Duration? 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if the access is good. We're setting up a contact network inside the Nigerian Ministry of Mines. You'll be the primary liaison. And here's where the volunteer for everything philosophy comes in. Because this wasn't a high priority mission. It wasn't sexy. It wasn't going to make headlines or advance anyone's career in dramatic fashion. It was routine intelligence gathering in a third-tier theater. A lot of guys would have passed on it. Too much hassle for too little payoff. But I don't turn things down. That's not how you build a career in this business. You take every assignment. You volunteer for everything. Because what looks insignificant today might be the doorway to something important tomorrow. And because the guys making decisions about future assignments are watching to see who steps up and who makes excuses. So I said yes, spent 2 weeks in preparation, got to cover documentation, memorized the business profile, learned enough about mining equipment to hold a conversation without sounding like an idiot, got briefed on the political situation in Nigeria, complex as hell, multiple factions, military government trying to maintain control while ethnic and religious tensions simmer underneath. The briefing packet was thick Nigerian military structure, Soviet advisory presence, known intelligence officers operating under diplomatic cover, economic situation, oil revenues keeping the government afloat, but corruption eating away at infrastructure, political factions maneuvering for power, religious divisions between the Muslim North and Christian South, creating constant friction. The Ministry of Mines is where the action is, my handler explained. It's connected to Petroleum Ministry through overlapping committees. Several officials sit on multiple boards. They control exploration contracts, drilling rights, mineral extraction licenses. Whoever controls these officials controls access to Nigerian resources. He showed me photographs, names, positions. These three are your primary targets for assessment. He pointed to photos of middle-aged Nigerian bureaucrats in suits. We think at least one is compromised by Soviet intelligence. Maybe all three. Your job is to figure out which ones and how deep the penetration goes. I studied the faces, memorized the names, background details, education, career trajectory, known associates, family connections, political affiliations. This is the groundwork that makes intelligence work possible. You don't just show up and start asking questions. You build detailed knowledge first. What's my approach angle, I asked. Business meetings. You're looking for Nigerian partners to help distribute mining equipment. These officials can provide introductions to mining company executives. Legitimate reason for contact. You assess their behavior. See if anything suggests they're working for someone else. Counter surveillance. Assume you'll be watched from the moment you land. Nigerian intelligence is paranoid. They've caught several Western operatives in the last 2 years. They're good at this. Your cover needs to be airtight. That should have been the warning. Should have made me more cautious about the whole operation. But I was confident. I'd run dozens of operations in hostile territories. I knew how to maintain cover, how to behave like the character I was playing, how to spot surveillance and work around it. The preparation continued. I got fitted for business clothes that matched my cover. Nothing too expensive, nothing too cheap. Middle-range American businessman. Got briefcases with actual mining equipment catalogs and technical specifications, business cards printed, letters of introduction from fictional executives at fictional companies praising my expertise and reliability. They set up the backstop documentation. If anyone called the phone numbers on my business cards, they'd reach answering services that would confirm my employment. If anyone tried to verify my business relationships, they'd find paperwork trails that appeared legitimate. This is standard intelligence tradecraft, creating the illusion of authenticity. I spent 3 days at the agency training facility practicing my cover story. They'd bring in officers to role play as Nigerian officials, ask difficult questions, try to trip me up on details. By the end, I could recite the entire business profile without thinking. It was automatic, natural, believable. One more thing, my handler said on the last day of prep. There's some activity around petroleum contracts. Western companies competing for offshore drilling rights. It's separate from your mission, but you should be aware. The political atmosphere is tense. Everyone's maneuvering for advantage. I filed that information away. Didn't seem immediately relevant to assessing Soviet penetration of the Ministry of Mines, but operational context is always useful. I flew commercial from Dulles to Paris, Paris to Abidjan, Abidjan to Lagos. The whole trip took about 20 hours. Long flights give you time to get into character. I spent the hours reviewing mental notes, practicing the cover story. Getting into the headspace of a businessman, focused on deals and relationships and profit margins. Got into Lagos late evening the day before my arrest. The airport was chaos, typical West African international terminal. Crowds, heat, noise, multiple languages mixing together, officials in various uniforms checking documents at multiple checkpoints. It took 90 minutes to clear initial immigration. I caught a taxi to the hotel, mid-range business establishment near the airport. Not fancy, too fancy would draw attention. Not cheap, too cheap would make people wonder why a supposedly successful businessman was staying there just right for the cover. Checked in around 9 o'clock that evening. The desk clerk spent a long time examining my passport. Too long. Asked detailed questions about my business, how long I'd be staying, who I'd be meeting, where my meetings were scheduled. At the time, I thought he was just being thorough. Nigerian bureaucracy has a reputation for detailed record keeping. But looking back, that was the first sign that something was already in motion. I went up to my room, 4th floor, small but clean, single bed, desk, window overlooking the parking lot. I did a quick sweep for surveillance devices habit from years of operating in hostile territories. Nothing obvious. Unpacked. Set out my business materials for the next day's meetings. Went down to the hotel restaurant around 9:30, ordered dinner, rice, some kind of fish stew, decent food. While I ate, I scanned the room. Standard operational awareness. Looking for anyone paying too much attention. Anyone who didn't fit the normal pattern of hotel guests. There was a guy in the corner, reading a newspaper, nursing a beer. Could have been a hotel guest. Could have been local. Nothing immediately suspicious. But he was there. And when I finished dinner and went back upstairs, I noticed the same guy in the lobby. Still reading, still nursing that same beer. Surveillance, maybe, or coincidence. Hard to tell on the first night. I filed it away, went back to my room, reviewed my notes for the next day's meeting at the Ministry of Mines. 11 o'clock appointment with one of the officials from the briefing photos. Initial introduction, feeling out conversation, nothing heavy on the first meeting. I set my alarm for 6 in the morning. Planned to get to the airport early for my scheduled contact meeting, get through customs, grab a taxi into the city, arrive at the ministry with time to spare. Went to sleep thinking the operation was progressing normally. Standard intelligence work. Routine cover maintenance. No indication that in 12 hours I'd be sitting in a detention cell wondering if my career was over. But that's how these things work. The actual moment of compromise, the arrest, the interrogation, that's just the visible part. The real damage had already been done. Someone had already decided to burn me. Information had already been passed. The trap had already been set. I just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I woke up at 5:30, showered, dressed in business clothes, slacks, button-down shirt, sport coat, looking the part, businessman ready for a day of meetings, checked my documents, passport, business cards, letters of introduction, everything in order. Went down to the lobby around 5:45, checked out, paid cash, always pay cash in operations. Credit cards leave too many records. The desk clerk processed the checkout slowly, very slowly. Made small talk about my business. Asked if I'd be returning to Lagos, standard questions, or surveillance protocol. Hard to tell. I caught a taxi to the airport. 20-minute drive through Lagos morning traffic. Already busy at 6 in the morning. Motorcycles weaving through cars. Street vendors setting up. The city waking up to another day. The taxi dropped me at the international terminal. I paid the driver, grabbed my bags, headed toward the customs checkpoint for departing passengers. Wait, no. I wasn't departing. I was heading toward the domestic meeting area where my contact was supposed to be waiting. But something felt off. The airport had too many security officers visible, more than normal, and they seemed alert, watchful. I approached the main customs checkpoint. Standard procedure. Show passport. Answer questions. Get cleared. Move on to the meeting. That's when Officer's sharp eyes appeared. That's when everything changed. That's when I realized the operation had already gone sideways before it even started. The first night in detention is when you start to understand just how bad the situation might get. Not because they're mistreating you. The guards are actually pretty professional. They bring me food, rice, and some kind of stew, not great but edible. They let me use the toilet. They don't rough me up or threaten me. But it's the isolation that starts working on your mind, the not knowing, the waiting. I can hear Lagos outside, traffic, horns, the city noise that never really stops. Inside this detention room, there's nothing. Just me and the concrete walls and the slow passage of time. Around 8 o'clock that evening, Inspector Okonkwo comes back. He's got more files now, thicker folders. Someone's been doing research. Mr. Wall, he says, settling into the chair they've brought in, I have learned some very interesting things about you. You were in the United States Army, Special Forces. You served in Vietnam. You worked for something called Studies and Observation Group. This is correct? So they've pulled my military records, or at least parts of them. SOG is technically classified, but my service record would show the unit designation even if the operational details are redacted. This means they've gone deeper than just checking my current cover. They're building a profile. I served in the military, I say. That was a long time ago. I've been in private business for years. Yes, he waves his hand dismissively. Private business. Import, export. But you see, Mr. Wall, a man with your background does not simply retire to selling mining equipment. A man with your skills, your experience, you continue to serve, perhaps not in uniform. But you serve. He's not wrong, but admitting that doesn't help my situation. What I find most interesting, he continues, is that you came to Lagos now, at this particular time, when we are having very sensitive negotiations regarding petroleum exploration rights, when several Western companies are competing for access to Nigerian offshore fields, when there is much interest in who will win these contracts and what influence various foreign governments might exert. And there it is, the real reason I'm here. Not because they caught me in some routine counterintelligence sweep, but because my arrival coincided with something bigger, something I didn't even know about because the briefing at Langley hadn't mentioned petroleum contracts as the primary issue. They'd told me to assess Soviet penetration of the Ministry of Mines. Simple intelligence gathering. But apparently there's a whole nother layer of political and economic maneuvering happening that I walk straight into the middle of. I don't know anything about petroleum contracts, I say, which is absolutely true. I sell mining equipment, drills, excavation machinery. That's my business. And yet you plan to meet with officials at the Ministry of Mines, officials who also have connections to the Petroleum Ministry, who sit on committees that award exploration contracts. You see how this looks. Yes, he's connecting dots that don't actually connect. But from his perspective, they make a pattern. American intelligence operative arrives in Lagos. Plans to meet with government officials connected to major petroleum deals. Obviously, he's here to gather intelligence on the contract negotiations, maybe try to influence them in favor of American companies, maybe try to identify which Nigerian officials can be bribed or blackmailed. The problem is, even though his theory is wrong about my specific mission, the general picture he's painting isn't far off from how intelligence operations work, and trying to explain that I was actually here for completely different reasons just makes me sound like I'm spinning a more complicated cover story. Inspector, I say, I think there's been a serious misunderstanding. If you'll contact the American Embassy, they can help clarify my status. I am happy to cooperate with any legitimate inquiry into my activities. He considers this. We will contact your embassy in due time, but first, I would like to understand who gave you the information about our officials. Who told you which ministry employees to target? Who is your Nigerian source? And here's where the interrogation takes a turn, because he's not just interested in what I'm doing, he's interested in the network. He wants to roll up whoever inside the Nigerian government has been cooperating with American intelligence. That's always the primary goal when they catch a foreign operative, use him to identify the local collaborators. I don't have any sources, I say. I came to Nigeria to do business. That's all. He doesn't believe me. Why would he? But he also can't prove I'm lying unless I give him something, and I've been trained for this. You don't give them anything. You don't speculate. You don't offer theories or explanations that they can use to build a more detailed picture. You stick to the simplest possible denial, and you wait for them to make a mistake. The interrogation goes on for another hour. Same questions from different angles. He's looking for inconsistencies in my story, for moments where I slip up and reveal something I shouldn't know, but there's nothing to reveal. My cover story is thin but consistent. I don't have operational details to accidentally leak because I genuinely don't know the details of the petroleum contract situation he's asking about. Finally, he stands up. We will continue this tomorrow, he says. I suggest you think carefully about your position. Cooperation would be viewed favorably. Continued deception will not end well for you. It's a standard interrogation tactic. Leave the subject alone to think about his situation. Let isolation and uncertainty do the work. Most people crack not during the actual questioning, but in the hours afterward when they're alone and their imagination starts working overtime about what might happen to them. But I've been in worse spots than this. I've been held by actual enemies who had the authority and willingness to do a hell of a lot worse than hold me in an airport detention room. This is uncomfortable. It's professionally embarrassing. It might tank my career, but it's not life-threatening. Not yet, anyway. The second day is more the same. Different interrogators, more questions about my background, my business, my contacts. They bring in a guy who claims to be from the petroleum ministry, asks detailed questions about drilling equipment and offshore platforms. I can tell he's testing me, trying to see if I actually know anything about the industry or if I'm just reciting memorized cover information. I hold my own. I've done enough preparation to discuss mining equipment credibly, and there's enough overlap with petroleum extraction that I can speak intelligently about drilling technology and equipment sourcing. But I can tell they're not convinced. The story holds together, but it doesn't feel authentic. And in intelligence work, that feeling is sometimes enough. On the afternoon of the second day, something changes. Inspector Okonkwo comes back, and his whole demeanor is different, less aggressive, almost friendly. Mr. Waugh, he says, we have made inquiries with your embassy. They have confirmed that you are an American citizen and that you have no criminal record. They have requested your release. This is good news. But his tone suggests there's more coming. However, he continues, the embassy was very careful to neither confirm nor deny your employment status. They said only that you are a private citizen engaged in private business activities. This is, of course, the standard response when we inquire about intelligence personnel. He's not wrong. The embassy response is exactly what you'd expect if they were protecting an intelligence operative without wanting to officially acknowledge it. We could continue to hold you, he says. We could charge you with violating Nigerian immigration laws, entering the country under false pretenses. We could expel you. We could make your situation very difficult. Here comes the trade. I can feel it. But I think perhaps we can reach an understanding. He says, you leave Nigeria immediately. You do not return. You provide us with a statement acknowledging that you entered Nigeria without full disclosure of your activities. And you agree to provide information about any Nigerian citizens who may have assisted you. So they want a confession. Not a criminal confession, but a statement they can use to justify their suspicions and to pressure any government officials they think might be compromised. And they want names. I can leave immediately. I say, I'm happy to leave, but I can't give you the information I don't have. I came here to do business. That business didn't work out. I'll go home. No names? He asks. No acknowledgement of your actual purpose? I've told you the truth, I say. I've got nothing else to give you. He studies me for a long moment. Then he nods. Very well. You will be escorted to the airport. You will board the next available flight out of Nigeria. You will not return. If you are found in Nigeria again, you will be arrested and prosecuted. Do you understand? I understand. And just like that, it's over. Not because I won some kind of interrogation battle, but because they've decided I'm not worth the diplomatic hassle. The petroleum contract situation is sensitive. The last thing Nigerian intelligence wants is an international incident involving an American citizen who may or may not be CIA. Better to just kick me out and claim victory. 2 guards escort me to the international terminal. They walk me to the gate. They watch while I board a British Airways flight to London. They don't leave until the plane is taxiing to the runway. I settle into my seat, accept a drink from the flight attendant, watch Lagos disappear below as the plane climbs out over the Atlantic. The whole thing lasted less than 48 hours. But those 48 hours could have gone a hell of a lot worse. The flight from Lagos to London gives me 7 hours to think about what just happened, to run through the entire operation from start to finish, to figure out where it went wrong. Because here's the thing, this wasn't random. They were waiting for me. They had surveillance set up before I arrived. They knew I was coming. They knew I was using a cover, and they knew enough about my background to start pulling military records. That level of preparation doesn't happen by accident. Someone told them I was coming. Someone with access to operational planning. Someone who knew the Lagos mission was happening and decided to burn it. When I land in London, I've got decisions to make. The smart play is to head straight back to the States, report to Langley, debrief, let them sort out the security breach. The operation is blown anyway. Going back to Lagos isn't an option, and whatever intelligence we hope to gather is now compromised. But there's something about this that bothers me. Something that doesn't fit. The Nigerian intelligence response was too specific. They didn't just suspect I was intelligence, they seemed to know it. And they connected me to petroleum contracts that I didn't even know existed until Inspector Okonkwo brought them up. I make a call from Heathrow, scramble line, get patched through to Langley, brief conversation with my handler. He's not happy. We heard you got picked up, he says. Embassy reported it. We were preparing a diplomatic response when they released you. They were waiting for me, I say. This wasn't routine counterintelligence. Someone told them I was coming. Silence on the other end. Then, get back here. We'll sort it out. I catch a flight to Dulles that evening. Land early morning Washington time. Sleep a few hours in an airport hotel. Report to Langley at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The debriefing takes 4 hours. 3 officers. Lots of questions about what the Nigerians knew, what they asked, what I told them. They're looking for damage assessment, trying to figure out what got compromised and how much it matters. Did you mention any contacts? One officer asked. Any names of Nigerian officials you were supposed to meet? No. They asked. I denied having any contacts. Stuck to the import-export story. Did they show you any evidence of surveillance on other personnel? Photos of other Americans? Names of embassy staff? No. Just me. They focused entirely on my cover and my background. They take notes. Cross-reference my account with embassy reports. The picture that emerges is complicated. The Nigerians definitely had advance warning, but they didn't seem to have information about the broader network or the other intelligence operations running in Lagos. Just my specific mission. We've got a leak. The senior officer says finally. Question is where? This is the part that gets ugly, because investigating security breaches means suspecting your own people, looking at who had access to operational planning, who knew about the Lagos mission, who might have had motive to compromise it. The list isn't long. Maybe 24 people at Langley knew about the assignment, another dozen in the Lagos station and the West Africa desk, embassy personnel who processed my visa and travel arrangements, support staff who handle logistics. We'll run a full investigation, the senior officer says. Internal security will handle it. In the meantime, you're grounded. No overseas travel. No operational assignments. We need to make sure you're clean before we deploy you again. And there it is, the professional consequence of getting burned. Even though I didn't do anything wrong, even though the operation failed due to someone else's breach, my career is on hold until they figure out who screwed up. This is the part of intelligence work nobody talks about. The bureaucratic aftermath, the investigations, the suspicion, the waiting. I spend the next 6 weeks in administrative limbo. No assignments, just reading reports and sitting in on briefings that don't require my participation. Watching my colleagues go out on missions while I'm stuck stateside. The investigation moves slowly. Internal security interviews everyone who had access to the Lagos operation. They run financial checks, look for patterns of suspicious contact with foreign nationals, check communications logs. It's thorough, but it's also frustrating because I'm stuck on the sidelines while they work. During those 6 weeks, I have plenty of time to think about the broader implications. If someone inside the agency could burn one operation, they could burn others. If Nigerian intelligence got tipped off about me, who else might have been compromised? What other operations might have been exposed? The damage from a single traitor can ripple out in ways you don't immediately see. I also think about the tactical details of the Lagos operation, what I could have done differently, whether there were warning signs I missed, the desk clerk who took too long with my passport, the guy in the hotel lobby who might have been surveillance. The fact that Officer Sharp Eyes had a folder ready before he even started questioning me. All indicators that something was wrong, but none clear enough to abort the mission based on. That's the challenge in this work. You're always operating with incomplete information, always making judgments based on partial data. You develop instincts over time, gut feelings about when something's off. But those instincts aren't perfect. Sometimes what looks suspicious is just coincidence. Sometimes what looks normal is actually a carefully constructed trap. The investigation grinds forward. Internal security digs deeper. They pull phone records, travel records, financial statements. They interview family members and associates of everyone who had access to the Lagos operation, looking for any connection, any pattern, any evidence of compromise. 7 weeks after the Lagos arrest, they find it. Not through some brilliant detective work, through a routine security audit. One of the logistics officers, a guy named Patterson, worked in the Africa desk support section, had been communicating with a contact at the Nigerian embassy in Washington. Nothing overtly suspicious at first glance. The contact was listed as a legitimate liaison for visa processing and travel coordination, but the volume of communication was higher than necessary for routine administrative work. Further investigation revealed that Patterson had gambling debts, significant debts, $40,000 owed to bookies who weren't patient about payment schedules, and in the months leading up to my Lagos deployment, Patterson's financial situation had suddenly improved. The debts got paid off. Bank records showed cash deposits that couldn't be accounted for by his salary. They brought him in for questioning, polygraph examination, detailed financial review. Patterson held out for about 6 hours. Then he folded, confessed everything. He'd been recruited by Nigerian intelligence almost a year earlier. They'd identified him through routine monitoring of embassy contacts. They'd learned about his gambling problem. They'd offered money, initially just small amounts, $500 here, $1,000 there, information about visa processing times, names of Americans traveling to Nigeria, low-level administrative details that seemed harmless. But over time, the Nigerian intelligence officer handling him had pushed for more detailed information, more sensitive material, access to operational planning. And Patterson, already compromised and desperate for money, had kept providing it. He'd had access to the operational planning for the Lagos mission. Not the classified details. He wasn't cleared for that level, but the administrative support elements, travel itineraries, cover documentation, logistics coordination. He'd known I was going to Lagos. He'd known my cover story. He'd known when I'd arrive, and he'd passed all of it to his Nigerian handler for $5,000. $5,000. That's what it took to blow the operation, to put me at risk, to compromise whatever intelligence we might have gathered, to potentially endanger any Nigerian sources who might have been exposed if the interrogation had gone differently. The interrogation of Patterson revealed more. He'd compromised 3 other operations in West Africa over the previous 8 months. 2 had been aborted when the operators sensed something was wrong. 1 had succeeded despite the compromise because the Nigerian intelligence service hadn't acted on the information fast enough. But the pattern was clear. Patterson had been systematically betraying American intelligence operations for cash. Why? The internal security officer asked him during the recorded interrogation. The tapes of this were played for everyone affected by his betrayal. I needed the money, Patterson said. His voice sounded hollow. Defeated. The debts were killing me. I couldn't see any other way out. Did you understand that you were putting lives at risk? The security officer pressed. I thought it was just administrative stuff, Patterson said, which was bullshit. He knew exactly what he was doing. I didn't think anyone would get hurt. The security officer asked more questions about his Nigerian handler, about the information he'd passed, about whether he'd been in contact with any other foreign intelligence services. Patterson answered mechanically. He'd given up, knew his life was over, knew he was going to prison. They arrested him officially 3 days later. Federal prosecutors charged him with espionage. The trial was classified. They couldn't reveal the operational details publicly without causing further damage. But the outcome was clear. Patterson was convicted on multiple counts of providing classified information to a foreign government, sentenced to 25 years in federal prison. His career ended, his life ruined, his family devastated, all because he couldn't control his gambling and thought selling secrets was an acceptable solution to his financial problems. When they told me what had happened, called me into Langley for the briefing on the investigation. Results, I felt a lot of things. Anger, obviously, that some bastard I'd barely known had sold me out for pocket change. Relief that they'd found the leak and confirmed I wasn't personally compromised. But mostly just exhaustion with the whole damn system. Because here's what nobody tells you about intelligence work. The biggest threats often aren't the enemy services. They're your own people making stupid decisions for stupid reasons. Patterson wasn't some sophisticated double agent. He wasn't ideologically committed to undermining American intelligence. He was just a weak-minded fool who got in over his head with gambling debts and took the easy way out. The betrayal stung worse because it was so pointless. If Patterson had asked for help with his financial problems, the agency had programs for that, counseling, financial assistance, options that didn't involve treason, but he'd been too embarrassed or too proud or too stupid to ask, so he'd taken Nigerian money instead and burned operations and put people at risk. How many other operations did he compromise? I asked the briefing officer. 3 that we know of, he said, possibly more that we haven't identified yet. We're doing a full review of every West Africa operation that Patterson had access to over the last 18 months, and the Nigerian handler, diplomatic cover. We can't touch him, but we flagged him. He won't be able to operate effectively now that we know who he is. Small consolation. The damage was done. 3 weeks after they arrested Patterson, I got called back to Langley for another meeting. We've cleared you for operational duty, the senior officer said. Your record is clean. The Lagos incident is officially classified as a security breach not related to your performance. It won't impact your career evaluation. Appreciate it, I said. We've got another assignment if you're interested. West Africa again, different country, different cover. The Nigerian government has been notified that Patterson compromised you. They're aware the intelligence about you came from a traitor. It actually helped smooth over some diplomatic issues. Interested in getting back in the field. And here's where the volunteer for everything philosophy proved itself again. Because despite getting burned in Lagos, despite spending 2 days detained by Nigerian intelligence, despite the weeks of administrative hell while they investigated the breach, despite all of that, when they offered me another mission, I didn't hesitate. When do I leave? I asked, because that's who Billy is. You get knocked down, you get back up. You get burned, you go back to work. You don't quit because one operation went sideways. You don't let fear or caution or the memory of a detention cell keep you from doing the job. The officer smiled. 2 weeks, we'll have the briefing packet ready by Monday. I left Langley that day knowing that the Lagos arrest was now part of my professional history. Not a failure exactly, but not a success either. Just another experience, another lesson learned. Another story about how operations can go wrong through no fault of your own and you just have to deal with it. Patterson's betrayal taught me something important. You can do everything right and still get burned. If someone else in the chain makes a mistake or a bad choice, you can have perfect tradecraft, solid cover, good operational security, and still end up in a detention cell because some support officer you've never met decided to sell information for gambling money. That's the reality of this work. You can control your own performance. You can train hard, prepare well, execute properly, but you can't control everything. Sometimes the mission fails because of factors completely outside your influence. And when that happens, the only thing you can do is learn what lessons are available, pick yourself up, and get ready for the next job. The Lagos experience also reinforced something about organizational security. You're only as strong as your weakest link. Patterson was a logistics officer, not a field operative, not someone who carried a weapon or ran operations, just a guy who processed paperwork and coordinated travel arrangements. But his access to information made him dangerous when he decided to betray that trust. Security isn't just about the operators in the field. It's about everyone in the chain, the support staff, the administrators, the people who handle the boring details that make operations possible. They all have to be solid. They all have to be trustworthy because one weak link can compromise everything. After the Lagos incident, the agency tightened security protocols, more rigorous background checks on support personnel, more frequent financial audits, more aggressive monitoring of contacts with foreign nationals, better compartmentalization of operational information so that no single support officer could compromise multiple missions. Those changes came too late to help me in Lagos. But they might prevent the next Billy from getting burned the same way. That's how institutional learning works. You pay for lessons in operational failures. Then you build systems to prevent those failures from repeating. The Lagos airport arrest lives in my memory different than combat experiences. Combat is immediate threat, response, survival. You process it through action. But something like Lagos, where you're powerless, where you're sitting in a detention cell while bureaucrats decide your fate, that's a different kind of stress. That burrows into your mind and makes you question things you thought were solid. After I got back to operational duty, I started thinking about what Lagos actually taught me. Not the technical lessons, those were obvious, but the deeper ones, the ones that apply whether you're in intelligence work or any other high-stakes profession where trust and preparation matter. First lesson, cover stories only work until someone decides to really check them. I'd used that import-export dealer cover successfully before Lagos. But when Nigerian intelligence actually investigated my business relationships, actually looked at my behavior patterns, actually compared my activities to what a real businessman would do, it fell apart. Whatever story you're telling about yourself needs depth, needs backup layers, Because when someone applies real pressure, surface level preparation won't hold. Second lesson, you will get burned by people you trust, not because they're evil, because they're weak. Patterson didn't betray operations out of ideology or hatred. He did it because he had gambling debts and couldn't face his problems honestly. In any organization, you're dependent on people in the chain, and sometimes those people fail. You can't prevent that, but you can build systems that limit how much damage any single failure can cause. Third lesson, mental toughness matters more than physical capability in most high-stress situations. That detention cell in Lagos didn't require strength or speed or combat skills. It required the ability to sit still, think clearly under pressure, and not crack mentally. Train your mind like you train your body. Fourth lesson, the waiting is worse than the action. Those 48 hours of uncertainty, not knowing if I'd be there for days or weeks, not knowing what charges they might bring, not knowing if the embassy would actually help, that was harder than any firefight I've been in. The discipline you need is mental control, the ability to shut down catastrophic thinking and focus on what you can actually control right now. The Lagos arrest didn't end my career, didn't even slow it down much after they caught Patterson. But it changed how I approached operations, made me more aware of the things outside my control, made me build deeper contingency plans. You're probably not running intelligence operations, but the principles still apply. Prepare deeper than necessary. Accept that people sometimes fail you. Build mental toughness. Don't let setbacks define you. Most important, volunteer for everything. Never quit. The Lagos arrest could have been my excuse to request safer assignments, could have been my reason to step back. But when they offered the next West Africa deployment, I said yes, because that's what warriors do. You keep moving forward. Patterson's betrayal taught me you can do everything right and still get burned by someone else's weakness. That's reality. You control your performance. You can't control everything. Learn what you can. Pick yourself up. Get ready for the next job. The Lagos airport arrest that almost ended my career became just another experience, another story, another data point in a long career of high-risk operations. It didn't end me because I didn't allow it to, because when they asked if I was interested in the next assignment, I didn't hesitate. You do the work, you prepare thoroughly, you accept it. Sometimes things go wrong. You handle the consequences, you get back up, you keep going. That's it, period.